Welcome back to another podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. I think we did a previous episode on Devmountain before. I'm hoping I'm not wrong. But this time around, we're going to be doing the iOS program and just reviewing that. So I invited 3 graduates on to talk about it, share their experiences. And like normal, we're going to start with the intros. Perez, if you want to touch base, like where'd you come from before engineering? Where you at kind of with the job search right now? And, when you graduated.
Oh, sure. So Perez here. Before engineering, I was working at Crunch Fitness. So I was like, checking people in and that type of stuff and cleaning the floors. I am a senior iOS engineer, and I graduated the iOS Devmountain in, I think, March of 2018. Okay. So I was iOS 16 cohort.
iOS 16. So is that how you name your cohorts? Is that the name of it? Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. How about you, Jake? I'll skip mine till the end.
Sure. Sure. So I previously was working in healthcare doing supply chain. And just talking with people, and it just seemed like a cool thing to do. I had 1 semester of computer science under my belt from way back when in college, and I did the online thing. Like I lived in Dallas at the time, and they had Devmountain had a Dallas campus, but they only had the web dev. So it was kind of weird because I was like there doing an online class. I was just like in a breakout room alone. It was pretty cool. And then I finished in November of, 2019. Yeah, almost said last year, but that's not accurate. And then, I've been applying for jobs, got a few interviews here and there. I've got a few freelance things I'm working on. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. How about you, Nick?
My background, I have a bachelor's degree in speech pathology. And when I was looking at options for post-grad, I've always kind of been into software development. And so instead of going for my master's, I went to, I was in cohort 31, which started January of 2020. And it was a little interesting just because that was the cohort, like right in the middle of that is where kind of COVID hit. So I don't know if like my experience was necessarily the typical experience, but I still went through enough of it that, I can speak about how it goes at Devmountain.
Okay. So I get that you prefaced that with COVID. Be honest about your experience because everyone else has. And so I think how each coding bootcamp dealt with COVID coming into things and how they transferred into remote, their remote programs matter. And I think a lot of coding boot camps realized their remote programs were really weak. And they had to shuffle some things and like figure out exactly how to fine tune them and make them better. So it'll actually be interesting hearing your side of before remote and after. All right. For me, I'm not a mobile developer. I'm a web developer, but there's a huge market in building mobile apps. And I think this is going to be a great video. A lot of people want to become mobile developers. So I'm excited to dive into this. So let's start with what we usually do. What was the application process like?
They made us do, I remember doing FizzBuzz, and it was really interesting because like I this is like, the 1 semester I had of computer science way back in 2006 is coming handy. And then like submitting everything. That was it. Like just having an entrance exam was kind of interesting. But I kind of get it because it's like, you don't want to like teach people like what a Macintosh is and go from there. So having that baseline was kind of handy, I guess.
Yeah. So I went through a base camp before I started. Like I applied and then went through like a base camp, which was a couple modules of just introducing you to the different types of properties, for a coding language, and like strings and ints and basic stuff like working in Playground. Although after my cohort, they kind of changed it to where you have to pass a certain test. And I believe that's still in effect today, which I think is really helpful because a lot of people in my cohort didn't really do the base camp all the way. And so we kind of started at like all different levels of people who, like really had no idea like how to code, and people who like had gone through the base camp, so they understand the basics of a string and an int, and then people who like have a history of software development and, they were really strong. But I think it's really nice that they have a entrance test now to kind of make sure that like you've completed the base camp and everyone's at least, on a certain starting page.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can't remember, word for word, but I do remember going through. One thing I do remember is how I felt. I felt like the application process was really, I won't say easy, but I've been to other boot camps like Flatiron, Lambda schools, but Devmountain has the best like application process. Because I didn't only do the iOS, I did the QA program, but I know from both applications, like. Not saying, the coding challenge was easy, but just the process, the communication, I applied today, the next day I call someone, where am I? Okay, this is where you are. You need to do this next week and stuff like that. So I've been like, when it comes to bootcamp experience, like I have a lot of experience. My families and friends have been through boot camps, and they will always tell you Devmountain is the best when it comes to the application process. That's what I do remember for sure.
Okay, so when you call it the best, what value does it bring that makes it the best?
For example, I'll say like my wife, she applied for the UX program in Lambda school. I think it took her about a month just to go through the application process. When I applied for Devmountain, besides the coding challenge, I was able to do everything in 4 days. The application, besides like the coding and the work you have to do, like the prerequisites, just the application, just submitting your name. I want to apply for this. This is where you are at this particular time. It's just more organized. Like I said, my wife was in the Lambda UX program and she had to be calling every day. I don't know, where am I? Stuff like that. Not to bash him. I like Lambda school, but I just think Devmountain has a more organized application process.
Interesting. Okay.
I agree with that too. It just seemed like I never had any question.
Yeah,
I've applied to universities and stuff that was way more of a nightmare. So having that was really cool.
So the pre-work that they provided, was it free?
Yes.
It was at the time that I went, and I think it's still free.
Yeah, it was free, and I think it was really needed. Like when I got there, I was like, "Yo, thank God I did it free."
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you definitely need to do the pre-work. And one thing I forgot to mention, I really like the fact that when you apply, like some of the employees call you to see how you're doing, and they actually give you their number saying if you get lost or whatever, like you can text us, and like you can actually text them.
Okay. So even if a coding boot camp is rigorous with the application process and they're exclusive and they don't let a lot of people in until you kind of are at a high bar, there's pros and cons to that. It's nice that they're at least very reactive to you just wanting a status update. That's definitely good. Do you feel like it was too easy? Did you feel well prepared going into the coding boot camp?
I felt prepared. Like I didn't, just kind of like assuming that it would be super handholdy the whole way, starting out with something like FizzBuzz and like what's a string. I wasn't expecting that, but it was nice to have kind of a baseline as far as like, okay, this is how we're going to start out. Because there's absolutely like every CS course I've taken, it's just been like a huge learning curve. So having that baseline of knowledge as far as like, okay, everyone knows what a string is, we're clear on that, and then going from there. So,
okay, all right, cool. So it sounds pretty simple, and I think I'm going to take a step back and not give so much my opinion about each of these because maybe iOS and mobile development is a little bit different. So I kind of just want to listen for a little bit. But what do you think of the curriculum?
I personally felt it was real good. I think it's a great curriculum if like you're gonna come out as a good junior iOS engineer. I don't think if you want to come out as a mid-level engineer, I don't think the curriculum is there. Just because I used to teach at Lambda school, and once you graduate from Lambda, you come out as a mid-level engineer, whereas Devmountain you come out as an iOS engineer. Just because Lambda is like 9 months, Devmountain is like 6 weeks of classes and then another 6 weeks of practicals and stuff like that.
Okay, real quick, Perez. I love the comparison, and actually, I've done so many coding boot camps. No, I didn't. I don't think I did Lambda yet. I think I have Lambda prepared. But do you have any contract that you signed that prevents you from talking about Lambda since you worked there, or anything like that?
I don't even know. That's a good question.
Okay. Well,
I'm a contractor, so I don't know.
Okay, cool. So it's all your opinion. It's not Lambda endorsing anything that you're saying.
Oh, no. It's just
okay.
my opinion.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, a lot of people don't look at those contracts, and I try to teach people to like really read the fine print on some of those things. But okay, that sounds good. Jake, Nick, what'd you guys think?
I would second Perez, like because it is, like he said, it's 6 weeks of like them teaching you, and it's really hard to cram everything you need to know into a 6-week program. But I would say that they really capitalize on that 6 weeks. And if you spend those 6 weeks dedicated, I mean, you show up early and you do the work. I feel like you'll have a good grasp on what they're choosing to teach you, if that makes sense. Like the pieces that they pick to teach you for that core, that core like milestone basically for your development.
Okay, I can already tell I'm going to have a bunch of questions. So, 6 weeks for their whole program. Did I misunderstand that?
No. So it's like 12 weeks, but like for the first 6 weeks, they're teaching you, and then for the next 6 weeks, you're like working on your own, on an app or like working in a team, to create something as a group. They have this. It's kind of like. At the very end, you work with other UX designers and QA on building an app, and it gives you like a little experience of like using like Trello or a project management type stuff.
Yeah, there's something I forgot to say. I think personally, I feel if you have no experience with iOS at all, I think you should definitely go to Devmountain. It's like I feel it's the best bootcamp. If you have zero experience, you never touched a line of code in your life, because that's how I was. And I think one thing I like about Devmountain is they basically teach you how to teach yourself. Even when you leave Devmountain, like you're able to like go learn by yourself, which is one thing I don't think I would have made as an iOS engineer if it wasn't for Devmountain. And this is like, like I said, I've never worked for Devmountain. They don't pay me, but that's a fact.
Okay.
And I know, because mine was structured into like, I didn't have like a deadline on anything because it was online and I didn't have anyone to slow down or anything. So and yours might have been this, but just on a timeline where I had like they call them anchor points, but they're like chapters where you would study like, okay, here's the basics. Like this is how you do UI kit. This is how you do networking, JSON, blah, blah, blah. And so it was the same for y'all and then after that, you had an assignment that was like kind of a culmination of everything or something where it's like, okay, we taught you how to do 90% of this, but fill in this gap and then pretty much submit the rest. And then you'd have an instructor do a one-on-one with you to show you if you did the right thing or how to fix it. And that was probably the most valuable thing because, I mean, by far, I'd say just having like one-on-one time with a developer that can tell you what you're doing, and that's best. Okay.
So, I'm just processing right now. So the second half was kind of a free for all, but you probably had like an instructor or someone to help groups as if you got stuck. Okay. So, well, let's actually kind of dive in. I guess this is kind of mixed with the curriculum. What do you think of your instructors?
I think your experience is pretty heavily dependent on who you have as instructors. And like who I had as instructors is going to be different from any cohort, like they're mostly former students, and they're, when those students get a job, they leave iOS and then they will hire like another instructor to help. And they often, I think it's a good thing that they reach out to former students, because I think it's a really good opportunity for the former student to get some experience. But it can be tough if your instructor is, because like you need to know code and you need to know how to teach. And those are like two skill sets that don't come in pairs a lot. And so, I had there was an instructor who was really great at code, but not necessarily great at teaching. There was an instructor who was really great at teaching, but like didn't necessarily know all the ins and outs of what he was teaching. And then we had a couple instructors, like two instructors that were really good at both. And like sometimes those instructors are assigned to your cohort. There's usually two cohorts going on at the same time. And so, it's just kind of like you're able to talk to all the instructors, but like sometimes they're not always able to personally help you because they're helping like with a different cohort. So yeah, your experience is going to depend on like figuring out which teachers there have that magic combination of teaching and the coding, and then, trying to suck up everything you can from them.
Okay. So they have no instructors that have been in the field.
So they do have, they have a lot of guest instructors that come in, and they are like, a lot of them are working in the field. They're not necessarily like a full-time instructor. They're working in the field, but they'll come in for a day and they'll help out. The guy who's in charge of the iOS division, he's been in the field. But I would say a lot of times, for the most part, the instructors, like the direct person teaching you, is a former student.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do my best to say my opinions for the end. I'm going to continue to try to ask questions. Perez, Jake, what was your experience with the instructors? Jake, how about you first?
Yeah, so it was pretty good because it was more or less the same thing where they had videos of someone talking coding, but it was like really specific. It was like a really good YouTube tutorial. I don't mean that in a bad way whatsoever. But there was like 3 or 4 guys that had industry experience that would kind of show you everything and explain everything really well. And then because I was like, it was at such a weird time because I had started getting into it like after everyone had finished the cohort. And then I was pretty much the only online student for a while. And so I would there was like 2 people that I kind of did a one-on-one with. And so it was pretty good overall. Like I never felt like there was like a lack of knowledge or like a lack of ability to teach or a lack of empathy or anything.
One more time. Perez, when did you graduate?
I think March of 2018.
2018. Okay. Jake?
I graduated, November of 2019.
Okay. Jake, November of 2019. Can you keep your mic on every time you turn it on? It like pops just for a second and then it's good.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've got my AirPods in. Yeah.
Are you muting and unmuting your mic?
No, let me just take these out.
Oh, okay. It's okay. Never mind. I thought I had a fix for that popping. Just ignore me then. Nick, when did you graduate?
I graduated in March 2020. Like April. It was actually pushed back a little bit because of COVID, but it was like April 2020.
2020. Okay. And so Jake, you were really one of the first online students? You're muted now.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I was the second online cohort. I think that they had done 8 in person before that. But yeah, it was still the Wild West as far as online went, and it's no shade to them because so much to figure out, but they had changed a lot as they'd gone along, because it was like the first one, the second one that I was on, and then I don't think they offered it for a while. I may be wrong on that, but it was a lot to figure out when you have like 2 cohorts in person at their Provo campus or whatever going concurrently, and then like online students just coming in whenever. So I understand why they wouldn't have offered that or slowed down on offering that.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting way of offering an online program where it sounds like they're trying to integrate like their online program with their in-person. They're trying to intermingle both a little bit. Kind
of. I mean, mine, like, I just went to the Dallas campus because my internet connection was really crappy at home.
Okay.
So that it was just to like see other human beings occasionally. So
fair enough.
That was part of it.
Cool.
From what I've seen, like at the time that I was attending in 2020, there were no online options. And then when COVID hit, it was full remote. And I believe now they're doing an online cohort option or like a remote option. So it's like separate, like you're either all online or you're all remote. And there's 2 different price points. I actually looked just the other day because I was curious, like where they went with it.
What does that mean? All online or remote? What's the difference between both?
I'm sorry. I meant in person or remote. So,
they're doing in person right now.
Yes. I believe, I don't remember the date that it started, but I know that you can at least sign up for an in-person cohort today.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. A lot to say. Prez, what about you? What do you think of your instructors?
I think, first of all, like Nicholas said, I think it's based on the instructor you had, but I think the Devmountain culture overall, I think it's really good. I was, really lucky to have the instructors I had because, like I said, I had really no coding experience. So I won't lie, I came in thinking this was going to be a piece of cake. And my first week I failed, I completely failed. I was in the bathroom, I was crying. And then one of the instructors pulled me over and was like, yo, it's okay. Like the whole, gave me the whole mental prep that he failed as well, that, I should stop comparing myself to others. And another thing I like about my instructors is like having that one-on-one instructor. It's like, I don't understand. I put him to the side. There's this instructor called Ricardo. We used to go get hot dogs and you have a piece of paper and be explaining iOS to me. So I think I was really lucky. So I think, like he said, it depends on the instructors you get. And also, some people don't want to take that extra step. Some people are shy. Like, I felt if I'm paying 10 grand, I'm going to get 10 grand worth of education. So I squeeze the juice out of my instructors. You know what I mean? Like completely. You know what I mean? I'm always slacking them. I'm asking it. Like, I'm always the guy in front of the class asking the question. Some people, they don't. I just feel some people were really shy and they didn't take, that advantage, but I definitely did.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like overall, everyone had a pretty good experience with their instructors, but you've also had or heard of experiences that made you be able to distinguish between a good instructor and a bad instructor at Devmountain. And you're going to get that at a lot of coding boot camps. That's not necessarily shade at Devmountain.
Yeah, I don't think it's unique to Devmountain at all. I think that's just school.
Sure.
Yeah. So there definitely is something unique to hiring students as instructors. And I definitely want to dive into that later. But okay, I think I got a feel for the instructors. When you graduated, how well prepared did you feel like you were to actually get an iOS position?
I would say, if not, because I took like a month off for
the holidays. And that ended up not being a good idea because COVID was immediately after that. But I felt prepared enough. I mean, I've done phone screens and everything and done pretty well. Like I feel prepared enough at this point. I'm still working on like getting apps published in the App Store. But yeah, I felt prepared, probably more then than I did now, if I'm honest.
Okay, so maybe that's a lesson not to let things go. And a lot of people do when they graduate
Exactly.
coding boot camp. Is your main goal to become a professional iOS engineer?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, cool. How about either of you?
I personally, I felt once you leave Devmountain, you're a great junior iOS engineer. And, I emphasize the word junior. So there's still a lot you got to learn. I mean, you've only been there for 6 weeks. This is someone coming from no experience in coding. I think you can get junior iOS jobs. But one thing I always tell people, getting a job is a job. In Devmountain, you learn the skills to get the job. You need to teach yourself how to, I used to think when you get out of Devmountain, it's just like that, but I didn't. I had to teach myself how to stand out. I sent over 2,000 applications or something like that. I know people who just got a job right after, but
You're muted.
I'm muted. Hello?
I can hear him.
Is that my audio? Oh, shoot. Okay. Hold on. Everyone else can hear but me.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. That's my headset.
2,000.
Bluetooth.
But some people it's different. I know people who send out 20 applications, they got a job.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I had to I was sending about 70 a day or something like that.
Wow. Okay. You're not writing cover letters then.
Oh, hell.
I think we could say that on YouTube.
Yeah.
We're talking about applying on LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, all of that.
Yeah. Because I've been mostly going for, I'd say I probably got about 200 out right now. And I've got, just on Indeed, I've been trying personalized-ish cover letters. Yeah, nothing too crazy.
Okay. And Prez, you have a full-time job as an iOS developer right now, right?
Yeah, I'm a senior iOS engineer now.
Okay. Perfect. 2,000. Okay. I guarantee it reached 2,000. A big chunk of that was probably not sending cover letters. You did a numbers game.
I didn't send no cover letters.
Okay. I mean, there are tons of strategies to getting a job. I like hearing about all of them.
Hey, it worked.
Yeah, it worked. Okay. How about you, Nick?
So when I finished, I mean, I was very nervous, it's hard to know if you're prepared because like Perez said, I went from no coding at all to, finishing Devmountain. And so I was very scared, but I probably sent out about 500 applications, I would say. And I also didn't do cover letters, and the person in outcomes actually told us to not worry about cover letters. And so I just sent out so many applications, and I honestly, I feel like I burnt out, and I stopped for a while. I stopped for several months, actually. I just went back to my old job. I worked back in the casino, and I just took some time to just kind of recover, just dedicate, focus on paying any bills that I had to pay. And as I approached my 1 year anniversary of starting Devmountain, it kind of re-inspired me I have kind of a seasonal job. And so I had extra time on my hands, and I just got re-inspired to you know what, I'm going to get back into it. And now I'm working, and it's an unpaid, I'm just volunteering on this application for children with autism, wearables. And I'm hoping that once I put that on my resume, I feel the biggest gap is just not having experience. It's hard to argue for a job when you don't have any experience. And I'm hoping I know the one person who he did an unpaid internship and it got him a job. And so I'm trying to, kind of replicate that.
I was going to say that's what I did, and it worked for me. So I went back to the gym, cleaning floors, whatever.
Yeah.
I got so many no's. Like, I got used to the no's. But
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Just in case it takes me a year, why don't I just go work for free? So it'll be on my resume that I've worked for a year, because no one's going to say, well, you were paid intern or unpaid intern.
Right.
Have the experience. So once I did,
I'm not putting that I'm unpaid on my resume either. I'm just
made $1 million. Yeah.
but once I did that, like, the outcomes started changing. Like, I started getting invited to more interviews.
Yeah. I think that's, and like, it sucks to tell people like, hey, like, you should do this unpaid thing. And like, but honestly, like, I feel like you get a lot of results once you have something on your resume that says somebody trusted you to work on this application. You did it for, 6 months or whatever. And after that, like, people take you a lot more seriously.
True.
So, okay. Like in the beginning of the podcast, I say no controversial topics unless it's tech. I do that for every single episode, but I love tech controversial topics. And taking a free position as a web or developer in general is a huge controversial topic.
Yeah, I know. I've heard a lot about it.
So here's the argument against it. If you can do it, you're privileged. You're screwing other people over that don't have that privilege to be able to take that free job. Right. And so my argument is for you. I 100% agree. It's very hard to get a developer position. You need experience in any way. It is completely like, that's like, you don't owe it to anyone else. Like, you just put 10,000, 20,000, whatever you paid for coding bootcamp into this. And like, you have to put food on the table. And so I highly encourage people to consider free positions as long as you can afford that time. I hate seeing people get screwed over. Like, it should be a temporary thing, and you should be like looking for a full-time position the entire time. Now, the thing is, people like, the argument against it is, like, it screws the whole industry over. It's like, people that aren't even in the industry have so little impact in the industry. Like, that's the last thing you should be worrying about. If you really want to have huge impact in the industry, get in it. Make something for yourself and actually like get in it, speak about it, talk about your experiences. And if you really like want to change the industry in the way like people are hiring that way, you're going to have so much more influence when you've actually had experience. So I mentioned the argument against it. I wanted to shut it down. I completely agree with you. So good for you for taking advantage of that. That's good. That's really good. Okay. So what kind of job assistance did they provide once you did graduate?
I'll go first, I guess. So I was assigned a sort of like a liaison with their outcomes committee. And, we met like, at first it was like once a week. And then, like once I got the hang of it, like they would review the resume, make sure it looked, like it was up, make sure it looked good enough for like recruiters. I think on their team, they hire former recruiters, people who used to recruit for other companies. So they kind of have like some good tips and tricks on, oh, this is what recruiters are looking for on a resume. Like, format your resume this way. And so I did all that. And then once you're kind of set up, a lot of it is like, they would send me, oh, this person's hiring, and like I would check it out. I would look at my log of jobs I've already applied to, and like I had already applied to it, so it wasn't totally helpful in that way. I wish there was, I know it's a big ask, and I don't expect this of them, but like I think the best thing that a school can do is make partnerships with companies to do like internships post graduation. I think 1 or 2 schools actually do that. And I think Devmountain would benefit a lot from, having something like that set up. But I would say outside of like resume prep and then occasionally like sending you people that are hiring, like I didn't feel like there was much else, that went into the job hunt, like the help that they give.
Okay.
And sorry.
You go.
Oh, I was a Lyft driver in Dallas during that time, and a lot of people knew about Devmountain, like people in the VC sphere even. It was just weird, venture capital sphere, and just like hearing about it, and it's like, oh, so I applied to like everyone. I'm still not hearing back. Like, it's tough. But yeah, I mean, the same services that were available to Nicholas were available to me as well. Just having, going through resume and everything, and there was one or two job listings that I hadn't heard of, but right now I'm kind of in the weird corner of I'm like 4 hours away from the major city, so like a resume with like where is the city? How do you pronounce it? Like. Trying to convince people that I can relocate's kind of been my thing.
It's hard to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, Perez? Similar experience with the help they gave?
I think so, but I think if you're going to a boot camp thinking the boot camp is going to get you a job or help you get a job, I think you're deceiving yourself no matter what boot camp you're going to.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's right on that. Yeah,
I think they just get you looking professional, which is the only thing they can do, because once you step in that interview, they're not going to call, it's just you and the person that's interviewing you. So it really depends on you. I think when it comes to looking for a job, 85, I'll say 90% depends on you, no matter what boot camp you go, except if, I don't know, Harvard releases a boot camp or something like that. I think it really depends on you and your skills. I think what Devmountain does, which I appreciate them for, is just making sure you're okay to be thrown in the water, like thrown in the market. Your resume is looking good. Your LinkedIn is looking good. Just things like that. And then from then on, you got to handle it by yourself. My biggest mistake was thinking there's somebody an employee of Devmountain is going to be calling people and be like, yo, hire my boy Perez. Like a football. It doesn't work like that, So you got to do all that stuff by yourself. That's why I say you have to understand before you go in that getting a job is a job.
That's great advice. Do you feel like if you called them up and asked, hey, I have an interview coming up, can you give me some advice or can we prep for it? Would they do that for you?
100%. They would help you. Yeah.
100%, 100%. I think Devmountain really has that joy in seeing you successful, especially the iOS instructor right now. I think his name is Carl.
Carl.
I think he really, has, it makes him really happy to see the students successful. When I was interviewing and getting jobs, Devmountain was always a good resource. I used to call my instructors and say, hey, could you just do me? This is just me personally, because Devmountain, this is not their responsibility, but my instructors used to do one-on-one coaching with me to get ready for interviews and things like that.
Okay. All right. Like I said, I wanted to do a lot of listening, and I'm still doing some processing. But overall, it sounds like, they cared enough. They all of you kind of drew the line in the sand of where you feel like they should have helped you, or what you felt like their responsibilities were, and where that ended in terms of you getting help. And Perez, I think what was his name? Carl?
Karl Feitzer, sounds German or something like that.
Yeah, very German.
Can you say that one more time?
I think it's like Karl Feitzer, something like that.
Yeah, okay. It's like Pfister, I want to say.
It's like a German last name or something like that.
Okay, shout out to him.
It's Mr. Carl used to be head of the iOS department, and then he's moved up since then, but he still stays pretty involved. I'm still on the Discord, and I'm always watching, what new stuff is going on. And yeah, Carl, he really takes ownership of the program, and he's still involved, anytime he's very reachable, I guess you could say.
Okay. All right. One thing I want to also touch on, Perez, you mentioned you're only in the program for 6 weeks, right?
No, 12 weeks, but the lecture is 6 weeks, and then group project, personal project for 6 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. When you were talking about before, you probably were just referring to the lecture being 6 weeks, but are you still a student after the first 6 weeks? Are you still dedicated to learning this program and building projects?
Oh yeah. So, cause as I think after the first 6 weeks, I think it's a group of personal first. I don't remember, but the instructors are there to help you. So once you're building your group app or your personal app, you're going to the instructor, hey, I have this problem, help me, whatever. It's just basically saying, I'm gonna teach you how to fish for the first 6 weeks, and the second 6 weeks, I'm gonna watch you fish.
Okay. All right. So I think I processed everything. I'm going to try to summarize it. And afterwards, you let me know. Feel free to disagree with me. But you let me know like anything you want to add in. Then we're going to jump into constructive feedback. So with Devmountain, it sounds like they're really responsive, right? So they make you feel welcome from the beginning. It also sounds like from a FizzBuzz test that they don't really challenge you with that test. And it might have seemed like a challenge at the time, but compared to many other coding boot camps, that is a really, really easy test. So, Prez, I can definitely see that they teach you how to be a junior iOS engineer. And I would actually argue any coding boot camp that says they have you become like a mid-level engineer, I don't believe it. And I've listened to everyone that's offered that explanation or they told me that this coding bootcamp was like preparing mid-level engineers. Most people that have been in the industry for 2 years are still junior engineers, like in the industry working on complex code bases. And I think we need to up the ante on what a junior level is and a mid-level is. That's my personal opinion. I think people are too quick to jump to the conclusion that they're a mid-level. So that's fine. They create junior engineers. Now, it sounds like the bar is pretty low to get in. But it's like, what's important is it's enough so you don't feel overwhelmed going into the curriculum. And that just might mean their curriculum needs to do a little bit of catch up or like really just have a good strategy of preparing you for the job market. And that's completely okay. And it sounds like Devmountain provides that. So good for them. Now, with the curriculum, I personally wouldn't trust their online program. It sounds like they're still figuring things out. It still sounds really new. Even if like your description was a year ago where they were with that online program, it takes years for coding boot camps to like really get that down. And so many coding boot camps struggled once COVID hit. So this is just my opinion, but I'm betting that they really have a lot of work to do on that online program. And you were one of the only people in it. I'd be really curious to hear like what the experience has been like during COVID for everyone. Especially the later months of COVID to see where they're at. I would, one of the most important things that you can get from an online program, you still want it to feel inclusive. You still wanted it to deliver this experience where you do feel a part of the program. You feel like you can talk to instructors, any instructor, reach out to them. They're responsive. You feel like they care about you. Career services care about you. And a lot of these coding boot camps, they drop the ball on all of this. And so I would, if you're considering the program right now during COVID, I would definitely have a lot of questions ready for them. And you definitely need to challenge that with them. With the curriculum, I don't know iOS. So that's why I didn't really ask specific questions about what you were learning. But, it sounds like you felt pretty comfortable going into the second 6 weeks, which is kind of just to test what you learned. It sounds like the instructors. So here's where I start getting a little iffy. I've reviewed a lot of coding boot camps, talked to over 1,000 coding bootcamp students about their experiences in just different formats. And when you bring in student instructors, Nick, you said it well, like you can be a good teacher, you can be a good coder. Very often those things don't go together. And it takes a lot of time, it takes time in the industry, and it takes time ramping up in the coding bootcamp to make that go together. So if you don't have like primary instructors at the coding bootcamp, you're bringing in guest speakers, the quality is going to be very, very different than if you had full-time instructors that were paid well and that were a part of that coding bootcamp. And so I would another thing that I would challenge is the instructor's knowledge. And I would even encourage people to challenge like what their teaching methods are, how they help students that are struggling, that even like a student that feels like they don't trust the instructor yet, how do they get through to them? How do they teach just like what is their teaching method, but like how do they ask them to explain a concept to you, ask them to teach you something. I have met a lot of student instructors, and they still have a long ways to go. And it sounds like they're not just keeping those student instructors, they're flushing them out. They're getting brand new student instructors back in. So they don't even have time to really get comfortable becoming good teachers. That scares the hell out of me with this program. I'm worried about that. I think they'd really benefit a lot from having full-time instructors that have industry experience and lean on that hard. That's my personal opinion, just reviewing tons of coding bootcamps. So that's one concern I have. So last thing with the job search, it sounds like, Perez, you mentioned like it's not their responsibility to make connections with employers for you. And you mentioned the reason why. You're like, they shouldn't be looking for jobs for you. They should, like, it's one thing to post for them, but not like directly connect. Hey, Perez, I got perfect person for you specifically. I completely agree with that. But they should be building partnerships with businesses. And like that, a lot of coding boot camps do career days. That's how you can even get just good guest instructors to come in. And so it sounds like they're working on partnerships a little bit, but like that is a responsibility to at least build relationships with these companies. And you talked about, like, Nick, how realistic is it to have these internships with these coding boot camps? I'd argue that people want more of a job guarantee now than they did a while back. And if you can't give them that experience, which is now what all companies are asking for, they're going to lose students to that. They're going to go to the coding boot camps that can offer that experience.
I want to say something about that. So I don't think I said it, but they do have stuff like career days, and they do have sometimes people from different like fields, recruiters come into the building to talk, or whether online or whatever. They do have, and they do this like regularly. Like once you pass, they invite you to different career days, but it's still up to you to get the job. I remember once I graduated in 2016, within the first 4 months, there were about 3 different career fairs and career days. Just to put that out there. I didn't get any of them, but just to put it there.
To add to what Perez is saying, the first career day I attended was really good for, I think it helped a lot of web developers, but not a single company there was hiring an iOS developer.
That was exactly my experience.
The whole day, the career day, like watching, I literally had 3 different computers because they had multiple people speaking at once. And I was like trying to listen to every single company. And I looked at every position offered by every company on that career day. And there was not a single position that they were trying to fill for iOS developers.
Yeah.
So they mix those.
I think that's a good point. It's probably going to be like 80-20, like 80% web, 20% iOS. And I really understood it once I got to the field. Almost every app has a website, but not every website has an app. So you got to, have that mentality once you go to the field.
I like your mentality with a couple of these things, Perez. That's good. So, okay. I think I've summarized everything I know. Did anything that I mentioned sound really off to you? Sound unreasonable?
So that one question that I have for Perez and Nick is, like, with your student instructors, were they both recent grads?
Within the last year.
Okay.
For me.
Yeah, the one student instructor I had was pretty recent as well. So, I mean, it was great, but it kind of goes back to, the point Don was making about that's kind of a weird pipeline that they're making.
And then,
to be honest, it's really helpful for the students that become teachers, because it gives them that experience that they can put on the resume. And I think the best thing that a student can do once they finish, if they have a good grasp on the material, is to become a teacher, because the instructors that we had, the school is still supporting them a lot in getting jobs. And I think that they had a better success rate at finding work after Devmountain, versus the people who didn't become instructors.
Yeah, because the one student instructor I'm thinking of, he was literally a student instructor for 2 weeks before he had a job somewhere else. So yeah, that really does go to your point.
Yeah. And I think one thing people should understand is, so there are instructors, which is almost like university lecturers, and then there are mentors, which is almost like a TA, like a lab TA or something like that. The instructors, I think they're like salaried, and I don't want to go into detail, but whatever. And they stay longer. The mentors, I think those are the ones that they leave quicker. And the instructors, they've probably been there longer. So my instructor had been there he had graduated like a year before, but your mentor might just graduate from the last bootcamp that just like passed. You know what I mean? And it has advantages and disadvantages. For example, having a mentor and instructor that was in the course, the person can tell you, I understand what you're going through because I have been there. You know,
that's helpful too.
Mentally, like I have been there. This was my struggles. You know, he's been to the exact course you've taken word for word. I think disadvantage is sometimes people expect to have someone like that's been in the field, you know, someone that's like a senior iOS engineer, but you got to think those people are really expensive. You know, that's a 6-figure job, you know, and they're leaving code to come teach you. That's kind of rare.
Yeah. And also like someone who's been working in the field for 5 years, you know, they know these like really advanced level topics like generics and stuff that they're going to try and throw at you. And like, you know, when you don't know any code, you're not ready for stuff like that, you know? And so to Devmountain's credit, the stuff that they teach you so well that I do think you can go on to teach other people what you learned, if that makes sense. So like the students who graduate, like have the capacity to be good instructors, you know, if they're able to like, if they know how to teach, if they're able to like convey that information. Because like Perez said, you know, like, having just gone through the program, you're able to give a lot of mental support, you know, because I also failed like my first, I didn't fail my first one, but I failed my second assessment, and my third assessment. And, you know, like it was really, I like had really high expectations of myself, and it's really taxing when you know, the assessments are like, it's not necessarily they're grading you. It's just like to see if, you know, if you're absorbing the information. And so like, I was looking at it like college, like I was looking at it like I was failing, and they were able to pull me aside and tell me like, hey, like, you know, don't worry. Like, this is not something that, you know, this doesn't reflect on you. Like, this is just how we're trying to measure, like, you know, how you're doing and what you're learning. And I don't know, like, I kind of agree with, like, I just think that the students that become instructors, it's not like the worst, you know, method, because people who have a lot of experience, they do things like a whole different way versus someone who's, you know, at a lower level. So,
okay, a couple things. Perez, you meant, so it sounds like you were guessing that the main instructors were there for about a year. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to challenge this more. A year's not that long. It just isn't. It really isn't. A year is, what's that?
I say, yeah, true.
So the reason why I'm saying this is sometimes I think coding boot camps tend to, I mean, this could be your own thought process, but sometimes coding boot camps can instill why they are such a great coding boot camp, because it kind of worked for you and you enjoyed the experience and you came out of it. But I think it's also helpful to be able to compare it with multiple other coding boot camps, how they do things and their success rates. So, you know, this is my experience and my opinion only speaking, but a year's not that long. And having an instructor that's like your main instructor only having a year of experience, chances are they're not going to be a great teacher. They still, like, a year isn't that long to become a good teacher if they came from being a student to going to a teacher. Now, and I think you also have this mentality that, like, these senior level engineers, like, they have this concept in their head that's so advanced for you that they can't teach it. That's 100% false. Bad teachers will do that. Like 100%. Like, and that's a reality. Like, a lot of coders that try to become teachers, you're right. Like, if sometimes coding boot camps will bring in like, oh, you have so much experience, this is going to be great. And they don't really know how to teach the fundamentals and like connect the dots for the people. And a lot of coding boot camps fail at that. So that is one advantage of having someone that knows the curriculum, someone that's a student that's not too advanced teaching some of those concepts. But what I have found is when you are taught by someone that doesn't have real world experience, like it's a very narrow perspective that you have of sharing the world of software engineering and how to go about solving a complex problem. I just think experience is everything when it comes, like, you're going to have to train someone to become a good teacher, but like there are so many ways to like talk about and teach like architecture, and like even just the way you take a concept or a problem that you have in your head and form it into a technical solution is going to look very different and usually much more realistic in what companies want, versus if like that student teacher only has that curriculum to go off of. And that's what I've seen between teachers that don't have experience and do have experience in the field. And so that's a really tricky thing. Now, the one thing that I see is, okay, well, a lot of these students are becoming instructors, but they're also looking for a job. They're also trying to get into the industry. Why does it take them a year to get into the industry? Why are they still there?
I think some of the instructors, like, not to go into too much details, they're getting paid salaries, and they're not as hungry as the mentors, which I call TAs. So some of them, they're not making too much, but I know some instructors that were getting paid as much as some lawyers were, like district attorneys and stuff like that. So like, they want the money, but they're not as hungry as, what's it called? The mentors. And one thing I also forgot to mention is, how I said there's instructors and there's mentors. There's always also like one iOS, I don't know what they call him, like a lead iOS instructor. And that person probably was a senior iOS engineer in the field before he came in.
Okay, but you're guessing with that?
No,
I can second that.
Yeah,
so
that's because the guy that we mentioned before, Carl, he's like the director. I know that he actually worked at Apple, teaching Swift. So
that's different. Okay.
Yeah, and so like him being the director, and then there's like a hierarchy that I'm not too clear on below that. So
exactly. So there is you might have one or two people. I know for certain there's going to be at least one who's been in the field, and you might get to see that person maybe once in 2 days. Like I did have my chance to do a one-on-one with him multiple times. And like mine was Andrew, and he's one of the top, like he rejected Apple like 3 times. And so like I got to, talk with him and get that high level experience from him as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little different. I talked about a topic, I think it was App Academy. I think that was a video. Maybe I'm mistaken, where we talk about like this predatory nature, how coding boot camps will scoop up developers that could be making much more, not teaching there. And like it kind of takes them away from the direction they were heading into, becoming a software engineer. I would be curious. We're not going to talk about like actual salaries. I'd be curious how much they actually pay the instructors. It sounds like they're bringing on the mentors for free, or do they pay them a little bit?
No, they pay mentors.
Oh, do they?
They pay mentors.
Okay. With the $10,000 coding boot camp, I think I have ideas of how much they pay, but I'm not going to get into that. Now, what I really want to do now, because, so it sounds like you had a really good experience. You like the coding boot camp. A lot of you have pretty much a lot of good things to say about it. I've heard nothing negative. It almost sounds like a sales pitch. So what I want to challenge all of you is, what constructive criticism do you have for the coding boot camp?
One thing that really annoyed me, and I think it annoyed a lot of people at the time, is they went through this phase where there's a Slack channel, and it's like a #jobs Slack channel.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh man. So the guy who's in charge of outcomes, he like got in the habit of, I don't know, like they do make these partnerships with these businesses to like promote, and there was one time where he tagged like everybody who was in that channel, and keep in mind, like tons of people are following this channel. They all want jobs. And this is a mix of web and iOS. But he had a habit of kind of tagging everybody who's following that channel in order to promote something. and it got kind of annoying. And a couple students like reached out, and honestly, their initial message was kind of just like, hey, can we not use at here, or like, can we not just tag every single person for these like promotional type things?
Yeah.
And his response to that was to immediately tag every single person in his response. And I just thought that was like super unprofessional. He like never backed down. He completely defended his side on why he did it. He said, hey, if you don't like it, you can leave the channel. They ended up like, I don't know, like expunging a bunch of people who were in the channel.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was handled so poorly and like really unprofessionally. But I would say that was like the number one most negative thing that I can talk about from Devmountain, was just the way that the leader of their outcomes handles like conflict, and
Yeah, and I think it's important to say Nick is saying this because once you tag people that's looking for a job, you're getting their hopes high. And then you bring a bunch of iOS engineers trying to find a job, like, oh my God, it's a job. And then web. It's like, can you just let me know if it's only iOS? You don't need to.
Yeah. But it wasn't that. So like he was tagging everybody to look at another boot camp that would get you ready to go into a career for sales. So this had nothing to do with a job like in coding or web development or iOS. This was to pay money, because I looked into this because I was like, I really want to see what this is. And it was to pay money to go to another like basically short boot camp to learn how to become sales. And you have crossover of tech and sales knowledge. And like that would make you like a good salesman for this like particular department. And people were pissed because we didn't pay 10,000, like you didn't pay money to become like a sale, and to pay more money to become a salesman, and like that's what he was tagging everybody for. And that's why people were really offended.
Yeah. It almost says like what you have right now isn't valuable. So let me give you something else that's going to get you a job.
That's how some people took it. And like some people were a little rude in the channel, like replying back to him. And they didn't need to be rude like that. I didn't say nothing because I didn't want to get involved, but I was, like watching closely. And I also think that the way that, he handled it was also like really uncalled for and just like not professional.
And it might have been the same individual, but there was someone that posted it was like a mid-level, it was something they didn't teach. It was like, I don't want to say Salesforce, but it was something like that where it was like really esoteric. Like, why are you posting this in the jobs channel? Like, what is this?
Yeah, I
paid by the posting like a Russian novelist or something. Like,
it was like sponsorship. This is like what I don't have proof of this, but I can't think of any other reason they were doing it.
Okay. Cool. What else?
Mine personally was, so two things. I'll start with the one he said. I think they should have a channel just for iOS. And I think they should also do a better job attracting iOS opportunities. Like maybe have someone just find maybe iOS and QA, and then just have another person just do, because web is, it's kind of cheating, Yeah. Like I said, it's like 80% web, 20% iOS, and so that's one thing. I think you should have one channel, because when I was looking for a job, every time they're like, yo, new job, I used to get my hopes high, and I'm reading it web. I'm like, come on, man. Sometimes they won't even say web. They just be pointing the skills, JavaScript, Node.js. I'm like, so it's just, I don't want to get my hopes high and then be depressed, you know what I mean? Because I'm mopping floors and I see, hey, channel, we have a new job. I'm leaving, I want to get hyped. So hype me up for a good reason, And I'd rather you just post anything at all than just to post. It just gets me depressed because all the web people are getting jobs and then I can't find. But even though, like I said, as a fact, there are more web jobs in the market than there are iOS, but don't put me in the same field. Put me somewhere else. The second thing is, so I don't have a problem with this. So let's say you don't do well in the first week. I don't know if they still do this. When I was there, I think Nicholas can confirm, but you had to, if you don't do well, you can repeat the week. But I don't have a problem repeating. I just didn't like that word repeat. I think it's very no one wants to say, yo, I'm repeating this week. It kind of makes you feel bad. You know what I mean? So like they should find another, maybe say I'm taking it again. Just saying just that word repeat, kind of, it made me feel like a failure. I didn't like, even when I failed the first week, I didn't want to do it again because I didn't want to tell my mates, yo, you guys are going to go here. I have to repeat, you know. I'd rather just, I don't know, find a different word for it, you know. Yeah. I know there's this, I don't know, German school, they used to have grades and they replace F or D with not this time or try again or something like that, just to encourage people. You get what I mean?
And that was part of it too, is I felt that pressure, and I didn't even know I wasn't on a timeline until like a month in. And like I turned in like my chapter 2 and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so behind. And like the guy's like, why do you just take a year, we don't care. Yeah, probably my biggest, and this has probably been remedied since then, but like, so with Devmountain, if you go in person, you get housing and like breakfast and like accommodation, so stuff like laundry, all that. But at the time it was the same price for online. So like, and that was the thing, is I'm like, that's why I went to the Dallas campus. I'm like, I'm getting my money's worth. I'm not getting breakfast and dinner. I'm emptying that soda machine. Like, it was annoying, like plopping down like used Camry money.
How do they justify that?
No, but that was the thing, is I used up like probably, I'd say like 5 hours a week of like talking with Carl or with another instructor. Like I really used that. I probably did more one-on-one time than anyone else in the history of Devmountain, I would bet. Like I got my money's worth on that. But if you just didn't have any questions, it's an expensive like series of YouTube tutorials pretty much.
Okay, so I think all remote programs and coding boot camps that even don't have housing should be cheaper than the immersive. It's not the same experience. It's always a lesser experience. But to actually not chip away the housing costs, like that's ridiculous.
Well, as it stands, remote is $2,000 cheaper than.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Only 2,000. It's still $8,000. I mean, I don't mean to take over, but geez.
No, you're right. I mean, it is.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. All right. So everyone had feedback. It's no longer a sales pitch, so that's good. And everyone kind of had their own perspective on it. Okay. This was good. I think I just want to make one comment. And Prez, I think that's kind of a tricky. I want to make 2 comments. I think I'm probably going to forget the second comment because I'm tired. But I think that's a personal preference of like, I think when you go into a coding boot camp, maybe that's just a lesson that I think most coding boot camps get it, but it's like people come in with all sorts of baggage. They come in with all sorts of like different levels of confidence and what you can do and like what the value you can provide to people. And like, I think that's a really hard thing to instill, is confidence in developers. You can instill confidence in code, but like people, like a lot of people aren't great at like building up their confidence in the world. They're not great at building up their confidence in like what they're actually capable of physically, mentally. And that's a hard challenge that a lot of coding boot camps have to tackle, because that imposter syndrome is real. That imposter syndrome can like get you to like give up on this entire journey and go back to your old career. So I don't know what I would replace the word retake with. You know, that's kind of like a really tricky thing, but maybe there's a different strategy altogether for making you a little bit more prepared. So like not as many students have to retake it. Maybe it's not the wording. Maybe it's just like more prep work, or I'm not going to dive into those details. You know, they can figure it out, but it's an interesting topic to bring up, because a lot of people that go into coding boot camps, like, you know, like we should feel better about ourselves when we actually do graduate and see what we can do. I told you I was going to forget the second topic. Oh, yeah. I'm surprised they combined web and mobile. I feel like a lot of coding bootcamps that like extend this extra program, like they usually like one program will kind of get tossed to the side a little bit. I think that's really good advice. I actually hope staff hear that because that's a big thing. Like it sounds like the curriculum was really good. You felt confident in it. And then like when you are, like you see that I'm not going to get into all the tagging and that mess with the job channel, but like when you see tons of web jobs, it does feel like they're not prioritizing you. And it feels like they are giving your hopes up with like tagging people with all of those job postings. So that's another challenge coding bootcamps need to tackle is if they offer multiple programs, they need to make everyone feel equal, like they're cared about just like the rest of the programs. I think that was also really good advice. Okay, I'm pretty happy with like where we landed with that. We have both pros and cons with it, just like any coding bootcamp has. It sounds realistic, and I think this sounds believable. So if you could give like one final piece of advice for aspiring developers, what would it be?
I would say before you go in, you really have to plan to not just complete the boot camp, but you have to plan on being unemployed for at a bare minimum like 6 months after. If you need, or like have, some sort of side job you can do or something, but like, I don't think I know anybody who had like a position in the industry within 6 months of completing the program. And I also, like me personally, like when I was going through and like applying everywhere and getting rejected, and then I had that instance where the head of outcomes, like it just felt like he didn't give a crap about any of us, and that was like further discouraging. And that's when I just dropped out and stopped applying altogether. And I just focused on like paying my bills, working my job at the casino, and it took some time for me to get over that and to like come back and say, okay, like I can do this. I know I can do this, let's get back into it. But I would just say like, you need to understand that like, and they do tell you in the beginning, it's not, they're not there to get you a job. They're just there to teach you the skills to get a job, but still like, they don't really, they tell you that their outcomes has like a 50% placement rate within 6 months. But like the way they calculate that is really tricky because if they stop hearing from people, then they're no longer calculated in their equation. And I stopped replying like very shortly after that dramatic incident because I didn't want to be a part of like the outcome department that treated their people like that, So I know that I'm not a part of like their, calculations in that, but like I also don't have a job, you know what I mean? And I think that they need to be more upfront with their students as far as placement rates because they're a lot lower than what they advertise.
I think that's really good advice. I think one thing everyone should consider is whatever that job placement rate is shown to you by the salesman of the coding bootcamp, it's probably a lie. And they probably manipulated the numbers.
And that's probably every bootcamp, but
yeah, I think every bootcamp
is true at Devmountain for sure.
Yeah. And so it's not that they're, I do think, I've been talking to a couple CEOs from different coding boot camps that it surprised me, like actually that a couple reached out to me, not just one, but they wanted me to do a video on like, they'd actually send me information about like how they're manipulating numbers. And I think I might do a video like that. I think it'd be a fun video.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So if people want to see that, let me know in the comments, definitely. But there are honest coding boot camps, but many more lie than you would expect. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Anything else?
I
know I'm just putting you on the spot.
I think if you go into a boot camp, I like to use different ways to explain things, but don't think this is going to be like a punching bag. It's going to be a boxing fight. You're going to get, don't think everything is going to go as planned. You're going to want to quit coding. You're going to regret when to come into a boot camp. You're going to, think you're stupid, because it's like there's just so much information and you have to be ready. I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to quit the first week. I thought maybe I have the problem. I was like, I felt I was dumb. I felt I was stupid. I felt I'm a disgrace. I'm an embarrassment. I'm the dumbest person in the class, but all that is normal. When you learn a new skill, all that's normal. And I think you should just get your mind ready for that, for the failure, And another thing you have to understand is don't compare yourself to other students. There are some people that they just gonna get it. One time, boom, boom, boom. 1 + 1 is 2. Like I'm looking like, what? That was my biggest mistake. I used to sit close to this guy. His name is Jaden. He is so smart, and I felt like he was just whooping my butt. But the problem is I was comparing myself to him until I realized you got to make it look like, you got to think it's like almost like it's like climbing a mountain. It doesn't matter who gets there first, as long as you get there. Someone might go there days before you. No one says I was the first to Everest. They say I went to Mount Everest. No one cares about what position you were.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot, actually.
I think that's something you should be ready for. And finally, another thing you should be ready for. Everything I talk about is being ready is once you leave, like I said, I keep saying this and I keep saying this, finding a job is a job. Get ready for rejections. If you're the type of person that doesn't like criticism or, like I used to make my friends just tell me no to my face just so I can be ready, just so I can practice. Like they would just, I've done interviews where the person was like, you're a waste of time. I'm not saying this is good. I that was totally disrespectful what they did to me, but get ready. Some people, they might tell them no the first time, or, you're more junior than I thought. That's what someone told me, is like, you're way more junior than I thought, but you might get depressed, but you just got to keep going, and you take what you learn in one interview, put it in the next interview, take what you learn in that interview and put it in the next. And then you just keep, you just keep growing. That's my personal advice.
I think you and I, Perez, would agree on a lot of things.
Sure.
How about you, Jake? We'll put you on the spot last.
Ooh, as far as like advice to aspiring developers,
yeah.
like, honestly, sorry. Oh no. Just kind of adding on to what everyone else said, like having, just kind of managing your own expectations and then trying to figure out. I think the biggest thing was figuring out how I learn on my own, because like 99% of web development is just Googling stuff and then trying to figure out how to like shoehorn that into what you're doing and being comfortable with that and being like, wow, I was Googling so much. Like that's part of the process. And just having someone being like, hey, it's fine. Like I understand that we're supposed to be adults and everything, but it's kind of nice to have someone just be like, oh no, you're okay. You got it, buddy. You got this,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that go to coding boot camps, most of them have the self-drive, the self-initiative to actually become developers on their own, but most are like, they just don't have confidence that their wavering path is going to get them there. And I think sometimes it helps someone just to also like reel them in a little bit and keep them focused, but just give it, a lot of it's just like reinforcement. You're doing great. All you got to do is put the time in, like just keep going. You're going to eventually get there. Okay, cool. I think we're pretty much all out of time. Let's do our outros. Perez, if people want to reach out to you, where could they reach you?
Yo, my Instagram is Life of Perez. You can find me on LinkedIn at Perez Willie in the Wobu. Complex name, but that's my LinkedIn. And like I said, Instagram is Life of Perez. Yeah, you can find me there.
Okay, cool. How about you, Jake?
I am Jake Lorsch, Loresch on Instagram, GitHub, pretty much any social media you can think of. It's Jake Lorsch. I've also got 2 apps coming out. One is a Bluetooth controller, like a light bar controller, and then another is a social media app for arguments. So watch out for that.
That's cool. You got lucky getting that name. There's DonTheDeveloper on Twitter that signed up like 8 years ago that never posts anymore. I'm so frustrated. Like I want that name. How about you, Nick?
You can, the easiest way is my last name, Boleky, the letter N, at gmail.com. And my LinkedIn is just my full name, Nicholas dash Bolkey, Boleky.
Okay, cool. Well, I hope you like this. This is a little bit of a different episode. We usually do a lot of web development stuff. Hopefully this gives a little bit of guidance for anyone considering even an iOS program in general. But if you want to see more topics like outside of web development like this, let me know. Let me know in the comments, reach out to me. You can actually just go like DonTheDeveloper.tv and go to the contact page. A lot of people have just been emailing me from that. Let me know what you think. But Perez, Jake, Nick, thanks so much for joining us. It's cool. Great hearing your experiences, and best of luck with the job search. I'm wishing you nothing but luck.
That's a wrap.